Wow, if you would have told me 9 years ago that, well, one, I'd be doing a YouTube channel, and second, that at some point into that YouTube channel career, I would be doing a video on Street Fighter, I would have laughed at you because that would have sounded impossible. Now, I haven't talked about this before really on the channel. Maybe I brought it up a few times in my live streams, but I was one of the unfortunate, because I'm gonna say it was unfortunate because I was so frustrated, people to buy Street Fighter V on the PlayStation 4 on launch day. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are probably confused to why that sounds unfortunate, because I believe now Street Fighter V is an incredible game. If you saw what that game was on launch day, there was nothing there. All the really cool stuff came out later as free updates. And I finished Street Fighter V in the span of 2 hours of me owning the game. I did everything I possibly could with that game. So after that, I was like, no, I am never playing Street Fighter again. I'm never buying this series. I might play the retro ones, but new ones, nah, I'm done. When Street Fighter 6 came out, I was like, nope, not buying that. Then we go into April 1st, 2025. And guess what was there at the Nintendo Switch 2 presentation? Street Fighter 6 as a launch day title. And I immediately realized that that meant that I was gonna have to buy Street Fighter 6 and talk about it. So I was so pumped to be doing that after the frustration that I had with Street Fighter V. And in today's video, we're gonna be talking about how Street Fighter 6 is a must-buy for the Nintendo Switch 2. But before we jump into that, I have to ask you guys to please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We've been doing so many great Switch 2 videos. You can check that out if you haven't. We've been uploading almost every single day. And we're trying to hit 21,000 subscribers by the end of the month. So if we can pull that off, that would be great. Let's jump right into Street Fighter 6. When I put Street Fighter 6 into my Nintendo Switch 2 and started the game, I couldn't believe the amount of content that you could do into this game. This game was completely different to the experience that I had with Street Fighter V. And immediately as I started the single player experience, because there's a whole dedicated story mode that was there at launch, unlike Street Fighter V, the story mode came out months later. That's absolutely insane. But I have been actually enjoying the story mode of Street Fighter 6 onto Nintendo Switch 2. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions regarding the Nintendo Switch 2 version. Obviously, this is a big game to have onto the system, and I think people are going to be wondering, how does it look? How does it run? We haven't really seen Capcom put their mainline Street Fighter games onto the system in a long time. I want to say, what, Street Fighter 4 was on the 3DS, right? We never saw anything on the Wii U, of course, and we just saw retro stuff from them from the Switch 1. So this is the first time that we've seen them put the series, or brand new entry, onto the Switch 2. And I'm here to say that surprisingly, as I was doing the avatar stuff, it was looking pretty good. Something that I noticed as I was making my avatar is when it came to making anything with like having a beard or a mustache, it looked pretty rough on the Switch 2. Now, if you've paid attention to my videos, I've been talking about the only times that you can tell that you're playing a Switch 2 version game is if you're looking at the textures of the hair and all that. But I will say that Street Fighter 6 probably is the worst when it comes to all of that stuff that I've been talking about, because it is very, very noticeable. In fact, I would say out of all the videos that I've done onto this channel regarding third-party games, Street Fighter 6 is the only game that you can honestly tell that you're playing the Switch 2 version. But that's not a bad thing. A lot of people would think that if I was to say that, then it's going to be pretty bad, because if you look at some of the third-party games that's on the Nintendo Switch 1, there are some that look really bad. It would be very noticeable. And while it is noticeable, it still visually looks great and runs great onto the Nintendo Switch 2. As I jump straight into the hub world, and I guess I don't know if open world is the correct wording I want to use in this. I think hub world would be what I would say that the Street Fighter 6 story mode is. I noticed that there was a lot of pop-in. Especially if you go out of the way, you can see the pop-in, and then you will actually start to see some of the characters probably run around, I don't know, maybe 10 frames per second if you're very far away from them. But as you got closer, that changed. Nintendo actually did this a lot with their Switch 1 games. One of the things that I can give as an example was Splatoon 3. If you played that on the Switch 1, you'll notice that the game's running great and everything, but if you go away from those characters, you'll see them to just drop frames and then to pop in, stuff like that. That is stuff that I noticed with the Street Fighter 6 Nintendo Switch 2 version. But when it comes to the actual gameplay and how it looks and runs, it looks absolutely phenomenal. This is where I would say, okay, this doesn't look very obvious that you're playing the Nintendo Switch 2 version of Street Fighter. I would say it's only when you're in the hub world of this game, making avatars, stuff like that, that you're like, okay, yeah, this is the Switch 2 version. I'm happy to say that the fighting mechanic of it is at a locked 60 frames per second. I did not have any frame rate drops when it came to actually playing the game, and it visually looked absolutely fantastic. The only time that I did have frame rate drops regarding Street Fighter 6 is sometimes during the cutscenes. But in terms of actual gameplay, exploring the world, fighting people, being in the hub world, stuff like that, there was no dips into the frames other than when you're, I guess, far away from a character, you can see a character is dropping frames in the distance. But in terms of just natural gameplay, you do not have to worry about the frame rates regarding that. Something that I also want to emphasize when it comes to the Switch 2 version of this game is I was heavily surprised by the price tag of this. Street Fighter 6 offers so much more in terms of whatever it is when you want to do, whether that's the story mode, arcade mode, you know, want to play with friends, online mode, stuff like that. I was heavily surprised that this was charged at $60, especially for the Switch 2 version. I thought that maybe they might go to the $70 price tag since companies are starting to move towards that, especially considering that the Switch 2 version of this game comes with years 1 and 2 DLC, which is something I also want to point out. If you don't care about the DLC, you can actually go out of your way to find Street Fighter 6 even cheaper on the eShop. They are selling this game for $40 without the DLC. And the fact that they're charging $40 for this without the DLC is honestly an incredible price tag with the amount of content that is offered within this. And I guess I'm just so impressed by this because this is coming from somebody that played Street Fighter V on launch day, and I just had not the greatest expectations going into Street Fighter 6 after what I had to deal with. 5, which from my understanding people like it now, but oh my god, launch day was a horrible game. I was so upset. I put all my hard-earned money into that too. Oh my god. And the cool thing about the Switch 2 version is it also offers some exclusive content. There's 2 specific modes into the game that you can only play through the Nintendo Switch 2. One of those is Gyro Battle, which is essentially you using the Joy-Con and doing motions with the Joy-Con, and it interacts with you or your character, whoever you're playing with, does that into the game. Honestly, I'll be completely honest, I did not get the opportunity to use this mode at all because it requires a second player. It does not let you play with a CPU. It has to be with somebody else, which I guess kind of makes sense. I feel like with doing a CPU with this, it would be pretty difficult. And then there was another exclusive battle mode called Calorie Contest, which again utilizes the Joy-Con, and I believe you have to do all sorts of things. And I think from what I saw with the gameplay, you're fighting and burning calories at the same time. The concept was honestly pretty cool, but once again, something that I will say, it was unfortunately locked to local 2-player modes. And I feel like the fact that Capcom was hyping these 2 modes up so much, it would have made sense to include this into online. I get why they didn't have the CPUs as an option to play it, but I don't know if I quite understand why the online was not an option. As I saw Nintendo staff and Capcom staff when they were doing the Treehouse really hype up these modes, and it looked very fun. I thought for sure there was going to be a way to do online mode with it, especially with how much they've been hyping it up. But unfortunately, it's locked behind that, and it was so disappointing to see that because this looks like it could be really fun. I even attempted to do Gyro Battle by having 2 Joy-Cons and have me be both, but it just was impossible to pull that off. It was not great, but it sounded so fun. I was so upset. If I was to make a genuine complaint about the Switch 2 version, compared to these other third-party games I've been reviewing and playing onto the system, I've always been telling y'all how the textures on hair is the only time that you could really notice you're playing a Switch 2 version of the game. And I've sometimes brought up that shadows and lighting can be all over the place. But when it came to Street Fighter 6, I'll be really honest with y'all, the lighting and shadows were really all over the place. It was the most noticeable I've ever seen a Switch 2 game be. It wasn't necessarily bad, but there's times that I was fighting in like the single player story mode, for example, and it's like so bright as you're fighting somebody, because I don't know what Capcom did here, but the lighting that they used for this was all over the place at times and kind of messed me up at times. Like, I was fighting a character and you just see myself be like super duper bright with how sunny it was. It just, the mixture, it didn't look good. It was pretty bad, if I'm honest. I also took the opportunity to try the online out, and the online was working smooth. It was amazing. Didn't even have frame rate dips into the World Hub, I think is what they call it, with online, where you can meet up with players into it. It was honestly a really cool concept. I really like what Capcom did with Street Fighter 6 compared to Street Fighter 5. I also saw that this morning Capcom announced that the Nintendo Switch 2 version of Street Fighter 6 is actually tournament legal, which I guess there are certain versions out there that aren't legal in terms of making like an official tournament. Capcom says you can do that with this game, and I guess it just comes down to the fact that this game is at 60 frames per second, and that's why, you know, they're like, in comparison to other versions out there back in the day when Capcom was like with mobile games, they probably would have attempted to put Street Fighter 6 on mobile if the right technology was there, and then that would be something that wouldn't be deemed as tournament legal. I'm curious to see what they have and what they've done in the past when it comes to this. Like, I'm wondering, was Street Fighter 4 ever tournament legal on the Nintendo 3DS? And best of all, this game is crossplay. I think that's an exciting addition. I feel like the Switch 1 missed out on times with this crossplay feature, and as we go into the Nintendo Switch 2 era, it seems like everything's going to be doing this crossplay stuff that you don't have to worry about not missing out on anything for owning the Switch 2 version. Overall, it was a great version out there, and I'm happy to own it, and it's something that I definitely think you should buy for the Switch 2. Granted, I suck at fighting games. I played online and got absolutely destroyed. I would love to be good at this game. I would love to be good at Mortal Kombat. I always play Mortal Kombat for the story, and every time I'm like, you know what? I'm going to attempt it this time. I'm going to pull off online play, and I'm going to be great at the game. It never works out. I'm never good at these games, and Street Fighter 6 is probably going to follow that same pattern, but I still greatly enjoyed my time and heavily recommend that you pick this up. In terms of a score that I would give the Switch 2 version, I would say I would give the port a 8 out of 10. The lighting and shadows get really bad, and as you're going through the hub world, or the single player hub world, that's when you can really notice that you're playing a Nintendo Switch 2 game. But when it comes to actual gameplay, it's very on par with the other versions of the game. I am definitely enjoying my time with Street Fighter 6 and can't wait to get back out there to continue this game. With that being said, I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say about Street Fighter 6 for the Switch 2. I'm curious to see how you feel about the visuals, the frame rate, the exclusive modes, all that good stuff. And something that I also realized that I forgot to mention is that there's Amiibo into Street Fighter 6. But I'll be honest with y'all, the Amiibo modes that are in the game, kind of weird. It just like saves your progress for whatever avatar that you made, and that's it. And they've been really hyping up these Amiibo cards and the Amiibo itself, which you would have think, since they're overcharging these Amiibos, that it would do something really special. But all honesty, it's probably like the worst Amiibo support that I've seen for a game, but the Amiibos look so awesome. Capcom, why did you have to make them $40 each, bro? I'll get them at some point. Hopefully they go on sale. Guys, I have been talking for way too much. Make sure to backslash that subscribe button, like the video, check out the Twitter, Instagram, Discord, all that good stuff that's in the description below. Also check out our other Switch 2 videos that we've been doing on the channel and all that good stuff. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.